Hi everyone, Rukshan here, and thanks for joining me for this video. I want you to imagine a few months from now, you're in one of the states in Australia, and you decide to head out to dinner with your family, and you're in the line at your favorite restaurant, and the waiter comes out and says, "Thanks for coming, and can I please see your vaccination certificate or your vaccination passport?" And then you turn around and say, "Look, I chose not to get the vaccine," and then the waiter turns around and says to you, "I'm sorry, sir, I can't provide you service. You and your family will have to leave." Now, in return, you say, "Look, the government said that this vaccine is not mandatory. I made a choice because it's not mandatory to have it." And the waiter turns around and says, "Well, that's the federal government. The state government here has said that we have to abide by these rules as a business, and if we don't, we will receive a massive fine, and we can only offer our services and our business to the vaccinated. So please leave the premises. You're not welcome here." Now, we don't have to imagine parts of this, right? Because we're already used to it. When it comes to QR codes and masks, we've seen the way that businesses have enforced this. Even though a lot of us have argued, a lot of human rights lawyers, whatever it is, people have argued that there's certain, rights that people have not to adhere to these conditions, and they can't be refused service based on this. None of that has mattered, right? The states have done largely what they've wanted to do, and people have had to give into those rules. And all of this, what I'm talking about today, is because Scott Morrison all but confirmed that vaccine passports and vaccine certificates will become a part of life in Australia in a few months' time. Of course, he left it up to the states, and which is, I personally believe, is cowardly. It's very important to have those in the highest position of leadership in a country standing up for certain constitutional rights and protections that we should have as individuals, and not letting the states dictate everything when it comes to freedoms that we have. It's just a cop-out, right? It's just a lazy way of governing, just by saying, well, it's not my responsibility, the states can decide. And but based off the last 18 months, we know exactly how the states will decide these things. So definitely, if you are not vaccinated, you will have difficulties in your life. And whether that's going to a sports game, whether that's attending a wedding or a funeral, we don't know the conditions that will be attached to this. We don't know where the lines will be drawn. Compassion has been something that's been missing all throughout this pandemic from our governments. They have not cared how it impacts individual families, individual people who are grieving when it comes to things like funerals, right? They've been very strict with their rules. So I don't see a situation where they would not act in the same manner when it comes to these vaccine passports and vaccine certificates. Now, for me, reflecting on this, I can't think of a single time in my life in Australia where I have gone into a restaurant and they've asked to see anything. When I was under 18, at clubs or whatever, something like this, they'd ask for ID to know that you're within the limits of the law to enter these venues, right? And that's something related to biology, our age. Is it biology? I don't know. I'm not a scientist. But yeah, it's something, it's related to my age. It's not related to my health conditions. No one's ever denied me entry based on anything like that. But, on reflection, again, throughout human history, I can find plenty of examples where humans, I'm going to keep it to the West, have treated other humans based on different characteristics in a different manner, right? These different systems, these different classes of people, segregation, apartheid in South Africa is one example. We have the way that certain cultures, certain ethnic groups are treated in Western Europe in the 40s. We have the way that the Americans treated certain people and the British treated certain people in their colonies and people that they looked on to as slaves. So we do have a history of treating people in a different manner. But one of the powerful things about freedom, the rights of those of us living in these countries, is that throughout history, generations before us have fought very hard to ensure that we don't live in these kind of societies, right? We've fought for certain rights and freedoms. And today we're seeing a similar fight take place. Now, it might not be obvious to many of you that this fight is happening, but I'm telling you that it's definitely happening. There is a lot of suppression of this. There's a lot of information warfare, disinformation, misinformation, whatever you want to call it, that's taking place. And a lot of it's been hidden because of censorship. But it's happening, and I think that just goes to our nature as people that want to be free, that don't want to live under these kind of tyrannical rules, right, that govern our lives to such an extent that our freedom is dependent on how much we actually are willing to give up to our governments. And there should be a limit. And those limits have been slowly chipped away at by the government over the last 18 months. And I think this is really the final straw, because if we give up on this particular issue, the way that I think we've given up on many other issues throughout this time, going back to the point where it wasn't like this is not very easy at all. And that is why I think you're seeing people in Greece, the birthplace of democracy, rising up and making their voices heard. They won't show you this on the TV, they won't show you this on mainstream news here, because they don't want you to know that there's people doing this, right? That's in Athens, like I said, the birthplace of democracy in the ancient world, at least. That's the foundational pillars of what we have kind of built on to build our societies here in the West. And then we have people in France, the home of enlightenment, that entire era where we kind of grappled with ideas around reason and logic and the natural law. And a lot of our liberal ideas come from this time period, right? Even they're speaking out against this. They're rising up because the same pressures are being put on the societies there by the government there. In the UK, if I look up historical time period, we have the Magna Carta was given. That's where we get Magna Carta from, the UK, right? One of the times in human history where people again said we can't have these power structures. We need a different system to recognize individual freedoms. And same thing in the United States. We have the Declaration of Independence, we have the Bill of Rights. So in all these great nations around the world, the very kind of foundational nations of freedom and democracy that we enjoy today, people are rising up to take on their governments, not with weapons, not by those kind of means of force that you typically see governments employ against other nations or against their own people sometimes, but just with ideas, with communicating, with sharing things, with protest, with dissent, with opposition, by resisting the temptations of coercion that are being put forward by the government. And I think that battle, that willingness to kind of see this for what it is, has to also take place in this country, in Australia. Because, like I said, once you give up these rights and freedoms, today it's a vaccine certificate, it's a vaccine passport. But tomorrow can be something totally different, you know. Once you implement this system, it's a slippery slope to something totally, you know, I don't want to even think about what that could be like. And it's a serious issue. It's a serious topic. A perfect case study for all of this is, you know, China in terms of their social credit system. With the social credit system, that wasn't just like you know, that's still being worked on in China, but that didn't just happen overnight. These things happen over time. You implement things, you know, at a layered level. So once you have a system in place, an app that everyone is using, you know, they've become accustomed to using it, it's been normalized, it's the new normal. Once you have that, it's only a matter of time before the government goes, okay, we're going to add this onto this app as well. Okay, we're going to add this other thing on there as well. And then next thing you know, you're at a shop and they're checking this other thing as well. Now, I'm not going to name the other thing because I don't want to fearmonger. I don't want to make things up because it's hard to read where we will be, right? Where the world will be. But, you know, there are other things that the government could add on to it. And it's not always about medical history or vaccination history. Multiple different things can be put onto these digital systems. And once you give assent to it and once you allow it to become normalized, it's very hard to work it back. So I think, you know, it's so important for us here in Australia to recognize what's going on. And I know many of you already have. And I think a lot of people may have given up, even though they've recognized, sorry, that's just my my pet dog. But many of you would have already recognized that, you know, this is taking place. But the vast majority of people, it seems like, have given up, right? Because it's far easier to accept these digital systems because we live in a digital world where everything's digitized, right? Scott Morrison was talking about, yeah, we're implementing a way to kind of drop it into your Apple wallet. So we use these systems already. So for them to kind of make it normal, it's not a hard task. And it's all about convenience. So what's the point? This is how some individuals would think. What's the point of resisting all this stuff when all I have to do is just get a vaccine, show them my the app at the restaurant and eat the dinner? Easy. Why would you fuss over this? It actually helps everyone. It helps the whole community. Makes it really simple. And what I'm saying is not about stopping people from choosing to get vaccinated or doing whatever they want with their life. What I'm saying is that if we, you know, give in to this, it's more than just about vaccination status. We are going backwards in terms of our freedom and our rights and our civil liberties. And that is very disappointing, I think, after everything that we've been through to get to this point as people. And I'm not saying we're perfect today as people who respect each other and respect people's freedoms and all this kind of stuff. No, by no measure is the West perfect. But there is something there, right? There is a reason that people gravitate towards these nations, these countries. And I think if we start changing that and going down the same path as countries which don't really have this in their DNA, you know, then we're no different. We're no different to, you know, communist regime, the CCP. We're no different to, you know, the whatever other regime that you can think of that's bad. We're no different because they will look to the way that we're treated in this country when they implement these systems for other things in their nation. So you think that in the West, we're going to have vaccine passports and just for vaccines. In other parts of the world, they'll be like, all right, cool. You got to do the vaccine passport, but you also need to put your ethnic status on this passport. Okay, you got to tell us which ethnicity you are. You don't think countries around the world would abuse that system? Of course they will. They're already abusing human rights now. So, and what are they going to turn around and say? They're going to turn around and say, like, look, you do it to your people in the West. You have these vaccine passports in your country to identify things that are a threat to your national security or your health and safety. Well, this ethnic group in our country is a threat to our national security, and we need to be able to have them on this digital certificate to identify who they are so we can decide to give them service or not. I mean, this has happened before. This has happened before, and they try to wipe out a whole group of people in a certain country. And I don't like making these comparisons because it seems like fear mongering, a lot of hyperbole and all this kind of these things, right? But these things happen, and it's based on these types of systems of identification. The right to choose, whether you're vaccinated or not should be a personal choice. And in a country, if you're dead set serious about individual freedom and liberty, to force someone to be a part of some medical thing that they don't want to be a part of so they can go have some dinner at a restaurant, or that they can go to the gym, or that they can travel interstate to see their family, is just crazy. It's just like, there's no words to say what that is. It's just the laziest form of governance that I can think of. And history will not be kind to this period in our lives. They will look back on this time in the history books. They will look back on this time when they discuss about COVID and all these things, like we look back on the people during the Spanish flu or whatever it is, and they will say one of the biggest mistakes that was made in the West is the implementation of these types of segregation, these types of vaccine passports, and these types of differentiation between free people in free countries, just so the government could have their vaccine quotas matched. It's crazy, right? Because now we're hearing from the governments, this is not me saying it, this is not conspiracy theorists saying these things. Every day our leaders get on television and they'll tell you the vaccine does not guarantee that you will not spread the virus and that you will not catch the virus. Leading up to the vaccination of people, what our leaders told us was that taking the vaccine will ensure that you protect the vulnerable. That's one of the main reasons that the entire community must take the vaccine, to achieve herd immunity or whatever terms they use. But if you think about this logically, if there's people in our community for whatever reason that can't take a vaccine because they're immunocompromised or whatever it is, and they're the people that we're trying to protect, so everyone that gets vaccinated can kind of go out and do these social things, and the immunocompromised people can come out as well. If they're going to get the virus from vaccinated people anyway, what difference does it make to the world? It's going to happen. So I think we need to really push back against using something like this, which the consequences doesn't seem as grave as they're making it out to be if people decide to make a personal choice. You can be someone that objects to having something like this done to your body, but that shouldn't then disallow you from participating in society. This is not the type of society that we've tried to build. Of course, if you are, doing something nefarious, illegal, dangerous, like committing a crime or something, we have laws in place for those types of things. But choices around your own medical freedom and your children's medical freedom should not be put in that same category, because even criminals, a sex offender, a pedophile, would technically have more rights than a person who decided not to take a vaccine. See, if a pedophile took the vaccine, they can go and have some dinner at a restaurant. But if you're a law-abiding citizen that made a choice about your medical freedom, you're an outcast of society. You're imprisoned within your own society, and that is a type of segregation and a type of discrimination that we have not seen the likes of before within free nations. and within times where it's not a time of war. It's hard to argue that this is about national security either. So that's just my thoughts. I think we should all be doing our best to reach out to our politicians, because I think all but there's a few independents that are talking about these things, but the opposition party, whether it's federally, state-based, everyone's kind of on the same page with pushing through these vaccination passports and certificates in this country. So reach out to your politicians, whichever manner you can, whether it's writing to them, calling to them, going to their office if that's possible. Obviously raising awareness amongst your friends and your families just as to how important it is to fight for freedom, to fight for our protection of these rights that we've managed to get over generations. And personally as well, your own self, just to do research, to voice your concerns, to make it known that you are not in agreement with this type of thing at all. And it's important to me, not because I am someone that is vaccine hesitant or anti-vaccine or whatever those things are. I'm actually not. Whatever I do with my health and my medical choices for myself and my family, that's my own personal decision and my own personal choice. But I do not wish to be participating in a society where I would be forcing other people to do something against their conscience that they don't want to do, just so they can go to a restaurant and have dinner like all free people should be able to do in this beautiful country of Australia. So I think this debate is definitely going to be heating up, and everyone should do their research, should definitely make up their mind about this issue and start raising awareness. Thanks for watching, everyone, and see you guys all next time.